The fire lands on the table in front of you, and you don't touch it right away. That's the first thing they teach you: never look eager. Eagerness is a tell. You sit across from your handler, a man named Calloway, who has the face of someone who stopped feeling things around 1994, and you wait for him to speak first. He slides the folder another inch toward you with one finger, like he's feeding something dangerous, and says, "This one's clean. In and out. Nobody complicated." You open the file. The target's name is Andrei Floresu, 43 years old, born in Cluj. Studied engineering before he found out that moving weapons paid better than building bridges. He works in the grey space between Eastern European crime networks and buyers who don't want paper. Trail's the kind of man who doesn't make the news because the people who know about him prefer it that way. The photograph shows him outside a cafe. He's laughing at something. He looks like someone's father. Calloway tells you. The transfer is in 48 hours. A shipment of Manpad's man-portable air defense systems moving from a warehouse outside Bucharest to a middleman in Istanbul, and from there, to people whose names you don't get to know. Your job is to make sure Floresu doesn't make the handoff, not delay it, not disrupt it, end it. You close the folder and you say, "Understood." Calloway looks at you for a moment longer than necessary. "First live operation," he says. It isn't a question. You don't answer. You fly into Bucharest on an Austrian passport under the name Michael Hartmann. Occupation: architectural consultant. The legend is clean: 3 years of backstopped history, a LinkedIn profile with 22 connections, a firm in Vienna that will answer the phone if anyone calls. You check into a hotel on Calia Victoriae that smells like old wood and Soviet era cleaning products, and you sit on the edge of the bed for exactly 4 minutes doing nothing, which is something else they teach you. Decompress before you engage. Let the cover settle around you like a second skin. Your local asset is a Romanian woman named Iona, who runs a small translation business and has been on the agency's payroll for 11 years. She meets you at a bookshop near the university, pretends to browse the same shelf as you, and without making eye contact hands you a folded slip of paper between 2 paperbacks. On it, Floresu's daily pattern: coffee at 7:30 at a place called Elephant on Strada Francesa. A walk through Cismeju Park between 8:15 and 8:45. Always the same route. Always alone. Always with earbuds in. Lunch at his apartment. Evenings vary. But on Thursdays, dinner at a restaurant called Lacrimi Sai Sfinti. Always the corner table on the terrace. Always between 8 and 10. Alone. Today is Tuesday. That gives you tomorrow to watch. And Thursday to act. You spend Wednesday doing exactly what you were trained to do. Nothing dramatic. You sit in a cafe across from Elephant and drink an espresso and read a newspaper, and you watch Andrei Floresu order his coffee and check his phone and scratch the back of his neck when he's reading something he doesn't like. You follow him at distance through the park 200 meters back, never the same pace, never a straight line. You note that he favors his left knee slightly, probably an old injury. You note that he looks up whenever a motorcycle passes. You note that he calls someone at exactly 9:04 p.m. and talks for 11 minutes. And from the way his whole body changes when he hears the voice softens, angles toward the wall like he's protecting something private, you know it's someone he loves. That night you lie on the hotel bed and you run the mission geometry in your head. The restaurant terrace is exposed on its north side. There's a building under partial renovation on Strada Sturbe Voda. 4 stories. Rooftop access via a fire door that Iona confirmed is kept unlocked by a maintenance worker who smokes up thereafter. His shift ends at 6. Distance to the terrace, 380 meters. Elevation advantage, approximately 11 meters. Wind off the river runs northeast at this time of year. You'll compensate left. 1 shot. You've made this shot on a range in the dark, in rain, with a heart rate over 140. The geometry is not the problem. You know what the problem is. You've known since you opened that folder and saw a man laughing outside a cafe. Thursday comes the way all days come when you're waiting for them too slow, and then all at once. You're on the roof by 5:30 p.m., 2.5 hours before the target arrives, because patience is a weapon and you want it loaded. The city spreads out below you in the cooling afternoon, terracotta rooftops, and the distant glint of the Dambavita. Pigeons landing and taking off from a ledge to your left with mechanical indifference. You've broken down and reassembled the rifle twice. The sight picture is perfect. You've ranged the target table to 383 meters, accounted for. The slight crosswind marked the angle. At 7:50 you see the maitre d' set the corner table. At 8:03 Floresu arrives. He sits. He orders wine. He does not look like a man who moves weapons for people who use them on civilians. He looks like a man who is tired and hungry and glad to be sitting down. Through the scope, his face is so close you can see the line where his stubble stops at his jaw. You control your breathing. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Your handler's voice comes through the earpiece, low and flat. Target is seated and confirmed. You are green to engage at your discretion. You put your finger inside the trigger guard. And then a woman sits down across from him. She wasn't in the pattern. Iona said he always dines alone on Thursdays. The woman is somewhere in her 30s, dark coat, laughing at something he said before she even fully settled into the chair. The laugh of someone who has laughed at this man's jokes for years. And then a girl, maybe 9 years old, slides into the seat beside him, and Floresu turns to her and does something you didn't expect. He reaches over and carefully tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, the way parents do without thinking, the way it means nothing and everything at the same time. Calloway's voice again. Confirm visual, you are still green, the window is open, your finger is on the trigger and the scope is on Andre Floresu's chest and everything you have been trained to do is pointing in one direction. The mission is clean, Calloway said. The math is clean. The geometry is clean. 30 meters behind that table a family is having a meal, and the agency has decided this man needs to die in the next 7 minutes before the window closes. And you are the instrument of that decision. And none of that is supposed to matter. They told you in training that the first one is the hardest, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're becoming. There is a version of you that exists before this moment and a version that exists after it, and the distance between them is exactly the length of a trigger pull. You breathe out. The child orders pasta. You know this because the waiter comes, and she points at the menu with one finger, and then holds up 2 fingers for some reason that makes Floresu laugh, and put his hand briefly over his eyes the way parents do, when they're performing exasperation and feeling pride at the same time. You've been watching them for 6 minutes now. The window is still open. Calloway has said confirm twice. You have not responded. This is not what hesitation feels like in training. In training, hesitation is an error state, a gap in your processing that you close with repetition and muscle memory. What this is, lying on a Bucharest rooftop with your eye at the scope and your finger at the guard and a family eating pasta 383 meters away, is something that doesn't have a clean word in any of the operational manuals you've memorized. It isn't fear. Isn't conscience exactly. It is the sudden and total awareness that what you do in the next 30 seconds cannot be undone, and that you will carry it in a place no debrief can reach. 0. Confirm status. Calloway's voice has shifted. There's an edge in it now, the particular edge of a man who has given an instruction and is computing what it means that it hasn't been followed. You say nothing. You keep the scope on the table. You watch Floresu pour wine into the woman's glass without being asked. The unconscious choreography of 2 people who have shared a table 10,000 times. She's talking. He's half listening, half watching the girl who has produced a small notebook from somewhere and is drawing something with tremendous concentration. A family, an ordinary Thursday, in a city that has no idea what is on the rooftop 4 stories above the street. The mission parameters have not changed. Andre Floresu will wake up tomorrow and drive to a warehouse and sign off on a shipment of weapons that will eventually be used against people who have names and families just like this one. Calloway has walked you through the logic 3 times. 1 life, weighted against the lives that end on the other side of that transfer. The math is not ambiguous. You are not here to feel, you are here to act. And you know all of this. You hold all of it in your head simultaneously. The training and the logic and the mission and the man in the scope. And what you discover, what nobody in any black site classroom prepared you for, is that knowing the right answer and being able to execute it are not the same thing when the scope is live, and the target is real, and his daughter is drawing in a notebook. Calloway speaks again, and this time the edge is gone. What replaces it is quieter and more serious. 0. The window closes in 9 minutes. After that, the transfer proceeds and we are back at 0 on 18 months of work. I need you to confirm. 9 minutes. You make decision. Not the decision you were sent here to make, a different one. And you understand even as you make it that it will have consequences you can't fully see from here. You key the mic. I have eyes on a woman and a minor at the target table. Unconfirmed identities, unplanned presence. Requesting abort pending secondary verification. There is a silence on the line that lasts 3 seconds and feels considerably longer. Then Calloway says, That is not a sanctioned abort condition 0. You have a clear shot, and you say, I'm requesting abort, and you take your finger out of the trigger guard. What follows is the particular silence of a man on the other end of a line deciding what you are. You break down the rifle with the same systematic calm you built it with. Your hands are steady that surprises you slightly. You expect it shaking. What you feel instead is something more like the stillness that comes after a decision that can't be reversed. A kind of clarifying quiet. You stow the components. Police the roof for any trace evidence with the methodical thoroughness that is, at this point, closer to reflex than thought. And you walk back to the fire door and down through the dark stairwell to the street. You do not look toward the restaurant. Iona meets you 40 minutes later in a parking structure on Boulevardul Uneri. She reads your face before you say anything and does not ask questions, which is one of the reasons she has survived 11 years in this work. You give her the equipment case. She gives you a new passport and a train ticket to Budapest. Departure in 3 hours. Whatever Calloway is putting in motion right now, and you know he is putting things in motion, the station in Bucharest will move to distance itself from you before morning. That is how this works. The agency does not protect assets who deviate. It manages them. On the train you sit in a window seat and watch the Romanian countryside go dark outside the glass, the small lit windows of farmhouses appearing and disappearing, people inside them doing whatever people do on a Thursday night, who have no idea what moves through the dark around them. You think about Floresu, who is probably still at dinner. You think about the weapons transfer, which will proceed now, which means somewhere downstream from tonight, there are consequences you own a share of, not the consequences of the shot you took, but the consequences of the one you didn't. You have thought about this. You are still thinking about it. You suspect you will be thinking about it for a long time. Here is what they don't tell you in the training. The agency selects for people who can do the thing, but it cannot fully select against people who will think about it afterward. Those aren't mutually exclusive categories. You can be someone who holds the scope steady and also someone who sees a father tuck hair behind a daughter's ear and cannot stop seeing it. You can know the logic is correct and still be unable to make your finger move. They train the hesitation out of you layer by layer over years, and then one real moment arrives and you discover that they train down to a certain depth and no further. The train crosses into Hungary before dawn. You are Michael Hartmann, architectural consultant, returning from a work trip. You drink bad coffee from a paper cup, and you look at your reflection in the dark window, the alias face, neutral and unremarkable, and you think about what Calloway said on the line before the silence. That is not a sanctioned abort condition, which means there is a conversation coming that you are not going to enjoy, and a file being written right now with your name on it, and a question being asked at a level above Calloway's. What do you do with someone who can do the job but won't? You don't know the answer. You know that Floresu is alive. You know that a girl in a restaurant in Bucharest drew in her notebook tonight without knowing that anything hung in the air above her. You know that you are not the same person who landed in Bucharest under a clean legend 2 days ago. And that whoever you are becoming him on a train to Budapest at 5 in the morning with no debrief scheduled and no approved version of events. The file Calloway gave you said this one was clean. In and out. Nobody complicated. They were wrong about that before you even opened it. The first mission is supposed to tell the agency what you are, what you're slowly understanding, watching the Hungarian plains come grey and flat into the dawn, is that it told you something too. You're not sure yet whether what it told you is a liability or the only thing you have left that's worth protecting. You finish the coffee, the train runs on. Sonnet 4.6 Claude is ein can make.